Welcome to Connecting You with Greatness, where we bridge the gap between you and the leaders of the construction industry, where you want to be. I'm Brooke Velasquez, owner of Bright Sky Recruiting, and this podcast will explore the journeys of C-suite executives and top professionals in our industry, uncovering the attributes and skills that propelled them to the top. Join us as we delve into the insights and experiences that can inspire and elevate your own path to success. Today, I'm here with Bendt Norby, Director of Construction of Heritage Development and subsidiary of Baldwin & Sons. Ben has been in the construction industry for 40 years in total, has been with Heritage for 21 years, and has been in the director role for 6 years. Welcome, Bendt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure your extensive experience is going to enlighten us.
Yes.
So to start off, I was hoping you could just share your story. How did you get into construction and get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I was going to college about a year into it, took a year off, traveled through Europe. I have a lot of family in Denmark, and came back and was getting ready to go for my second year of college. And my uncle said, "Hey, why don't you come out, and give us a hand on a couple of projects?" He has been a general superintendent for a large framing company in San Diego. And I said, "You know what? Why don't I go? I got a couple extra months before school starts." So I went out there and I kind of fell in love with it. And I was talking with some people who were teachers and they were making better money doing construction. So I was kind of had the travel bug, and I thought, maybe I'll just do this for a couple more months, go back to school, save up some money. And I kind of started to fall in love with it. I like to see the hands-on progress every day. And I kind of saw a lot of opportunities. So started going to night school and working during the day. And then I just kind of drifted right into full-time construction with my uncle and his company. So
Awesome. And how long were you with your uncle?
I was with probably, I would say, almost 7 years, probably 15 years off and on.
Okay.
We did some development framing projects. It took us we did some projects out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And then I was out there with him and a couple of other people for 6 years out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We built a bunch of stuff out there. So
awesome.
Both framing and development.
From there, did you transition to Heritage, or was there a step in between?
No, I was out there with my wife, my lovely wife, and we had a child who was 2 years old, and we decided that it was probably time to come home to San Diego with my family so she could be around her grandparents. And so we moved back, and we started off with Tom Honeycutt, and I was building a hotel out there with him, kind of consulting. We did the project management for a project superintendent for role and stuff like that. So, okay. And then we went over and we're doing a job for Baldwin Sons, and it was Pacific Coast Communities with Ron Baldwin and Don Norton. And they had an unfortunate accident. A friend of mine had passed away, who was the project superintendent, and they needed somebody to fill in. And I thought, you know what, this would be a perfect opportunity for me to kind of segue into something new and learn, broaden my horizons in this business. So that's what I did. I took on the job title of project superintendent for Pacific Coast Communities on the development side.
Okay, awesome.
And that was in 2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so transitioning forward, how long were you a superintendent? And then was there a step between superintendent and director? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So first of all, I was very fortunate to work with this company. They've been very open to growth and showing us different paths if we wanted to take that and explore it. So I was project superintendent, I think, up until about 2007. Then we had to slow down, and I did some offsites superintendent for them for 2 or 3 years, and they continued being a project superintendent. And then I think in about 2013 or 14, the two companies split, the two brothers. So Steve Baldwin started his own company, Heritage Building. And I decided I was asked to go with that company, and I became the project superintendent from them. And then an opportunity opened. They had been through a couple of director of operations, and I decided it was time for me to put my hat in the ring, and, with my knowledge and experience, and they accepted that position with me. So I became the director of construction operations in 2018 in January.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So what would you say are some key attributes that help somebody progress through the management side of construction?
On the management side, first of all, I think experience is very important. So, and I think it comes with time. It's not something, it's very difficult to just join it, jump into right away. I have a couple of kids working for me right now that have got construction management degrees from Boise State and Wisconsin. And there's just a matter of experience of how you're dealing with your trades, how you're dealing with your internal people, your accounting departments, and there's a lot of moving parts. And it's just something that comes with time and experience. It's very difficult to kind of just jump right into something like that. So I always recommend people, go out in the field if you can for a couple of years, go work for a subcontractor for a couple of years if you can, if that, if you're able to afford that. I think it's very important to get a perspective of the whole team and the whole process of what you're doing.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Knowing not just the book smart side, but actually knowing how everything comes together.
Absolutely. And that comes with experience. I mean, when I was young, I was a little bit more crass and eager and gung ho. And I think with experience, I've learned to just kind of say, okay, let's look at the whole picture. Let's not make it a fire drill. Let's not make it a drama. Let's get to a point. So, yeah.
Awesome. So in that light, what would you say is one of the most important qualities in leading a successful construction firm?
I think the most important quality that at least I would like to think in construction is the ability to simplify your goals of what you want your project to be. And those goals for me are always, and they're the standard goals, is always comes down to scheduling, budget, quality. And I know a lot of you have always heard this, one always sacrifice for the other, but how you get there is it's very important that people stay in a very simple path to the same goal. And when you start going on divergent paths, even though you have the same goal, it becomes complicated. So I just try to keep everything simple. I try to keep everybody on the same page and to achieve our goals. So
Awesome. I love that. That makes a lot
yeah.
of sense.
Yes. Yeah.
What would you say is one of the most challenging either projects or situations that you've dealt with in your time in construction?
I think it's typical on every project, and it's usually the end of the project when you're coming in to get that thing over the finish line. It's so easy it's not easy to start a project, but it's exciting, it's new, and you have a lot more energy. When people are finishing a project, they want to get to that next project. They want that same energy. When you got to close a project, that's when expectations are to be met, and those are very difficult sometimes and very challenging at times. And if you have the right people and you have the right mindset, you get there. And it's always going to be, can we get it sooner? Can we get it, can we move people in sooner? Can we get occupants in there sooner? And you're dealing with municipalities, that sometimes prohibit that. So it's always a very difficult process. And I always say it's 5% of the project and it's probably 80% of the labor. So,
Okay.
trying to get it across. So, yeah.
Absolutely. What would you say to those that maybe don't have the right teams? They don't feel like either they have the right management above them, below them, the right trades. How do they still bring in that project, or how do they manage making that happen?
I've been through that several times and it's very difficult. And I've always tried to place people with where their strengths are. So, even myself, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And if I can just kind of sit and talk with their team people and say, hey, maybe your strength isn't on the finish end, maybe it's on the front end, maybe it's over in offsites, maybe it's going to be up in the office doing clerical stuff. So I just try to place people with their strengths if I can. But sometimes it's a matter of sitting everybody down and saying, hey, once again, here's our goals. And if you can lay out to them what their job description is and what needs to be done and what's expected with them up front, it makes it a little bit easier. So, and you have to, it's a give and take with your employees as well. So
Absolutely. It sounds like just mapping out what their responsibilities are up front. And even if it wasn't up front, coming in later to make sure that everybody's on the same page is essential.
absolutely, absolutely. It's an old adage, but it's not expected. It's not the word to use, but we all have to go that extra mile, just to get this project in. So that's who we are. So we
Right.
all have to do it at some point. So,
Absolutely.
and unfortunately, right now, I've been through some ups and downs with members of the team, but right now we have a very good solid core that's taken me a long time to develop, and we're very happy about it.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what about mentorship? You talked about the company you've worked for being really good at letting you try different things. What has been your experience with either having a mentor and or mentoring people coming up in the industry?
I think mentorship is so important as you're coming up in the industry, and you have to seek it and look for it. And it's not easily given. People don't always want to give away their trade secrets. And when I was framing, for example, I would get very knowledgeable at what a layout guy would do, and then I would start doing layout on my own. But the only way I could really get some mentorship and some learning from this was I would come up to the lead guys and say, "Hey, I'll come out on Saturday. I'll work for free if you could just
Mm,
teach me whatever I could do." The other thing is when you get those mentorships, and I was fortunate with my uncle, I was fortunate with Tom Nilsson from T&M Framing, I was fortunate with Ron Baldwin from Pacific Coast Communities, and now Steve Baldwin, is you are also responsible for continuing that. You have to be reaching out to them. You have to, whatever you can do to gain their trust, and it's not something that's just easily given. So I value it very much whenever that opportunity arises.
that's
And
awesome. I
value,
love what I'm hearing is that you have to seek it out, that nobody's going to knock on your door and say, I want
no,
to be your mentor.
no, nobody's going to. You have to seek it out, and you have to be willing to learn and willing to do some things that you might think, or why is he doing this with me? For instance, my uncle, I would get to a point where I would do plumbing line or I'd do framing. I got really good. And I was making good money. I mean, I had a team of guys, we were making, and all of a sudden my uncle would come to me and goes, "Okay, we have a new project starting and you're going to go do stairs and you're going to be an apprentice." And I'm like, "Well, wait a second. I was a lead guy. My paycheck is going to be cut in half. Why are you doing this to me? Did I do something?" Well, at the time I didn't understand. He wanted me to learn the whole process. He didn't want me just to get focused on one thing. And this was my mentor, and I had to be willing to listen to him and take that advice and go with it. So,
That's interesting. Be willing to take a step back, one step back to take
yeah,
those 2, 3 steps forward.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
So within the construction industry, I've heard a lot and I've experienced it. There isn't necessarily always work-life balance. How have you managed that?
I've been very fortunate to have a wonderful wife who makes sure I balance that, and two wonderful children. So, and you work hard, and there's been a lot of weekends away from the wives and the family, but you have to set that time aside. It's very important. And I always tell my guys, I have two guys who will never take a vacation, never take time off. And I come to them constantly and say, "Hey, you guys need to take a few days off." And I can see when they get stressed out, and I can see those days. And we try to manage it to where they're taking that time, not all at the same time, every person, but
Mm,
it's important that they take that time off with their family. I mean, this is what we're doing it for, for at least for me. And if it's not your family, if it's for a hobby that you have, do that hobby. I mean,
right.
it's whatever it is. So yeah, it's very, very important. Work balance is, especially with me, it's very important. Yeah,
That's awesome. So really kind of like seeking out mentorship. You have to make it a priority to make it happen.
absolutely, absolutely. Yep.
That's
And I think
valuable advice.
it's important too to, in all fairness for your employers, is to plan ahead for this stuff. Don't just spring it on to them last minute if you can. It's very, you have to be respectful of what their resources and their needs are as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So looking back over your career, is there anything you would have done differently?
Um, I think one thing I would have done differently, and I came a little bit later in the game on this, was learning to read blueprints. And I think it's if I were to start over again, it's something I would have tried to achieve earlier in my career, is learning to read blueprints, taking classes, satellite courses in reading blueprints, satellite courses in codes, learning municipal codes, learning Microsoft, learning Bluebeam, learning Adobe, whatever technology that is new, Revit, that you might be interested in. Learn as much of that as you can and learn it early.
That's super valuable advice. I love that.
Absolutely. I had a kid come up to me. He was a framing kid. He's probably 21 years old. And I go down to the job site about once every 2 weeks. And he came up to me and he says, "Hey, sir, do you mind if I borrow a set of blueprints? I would like to study them." Seeking something from me. And right there is just, oh, absolutely. Let me get you some highlighters. Let me show you how to do it. Instead of just giving them the plans, this is kind of a Bible for the project. This is you're going to open up your general notes page. You're going to start there. This is going to show you where you're going to go. So you want to give him the whole direction of how to read these blueprints so he can really study and get into it. So I was very impressed by that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, in that light too, there's always things changing in the construction landscape, new technologies, new innovations. How do you stay up on those trends?
It's very difficult. Podcasts are a good one, actually. Podcasts are great. I've listened to a few podcasts on some of the new technology, and I think like when I was, Microsoft was such a big thing, when I was really coming up into it. Now you're kind of coming into these Procores and Bluebeam, and it takes a little bit of time. I have a project engineer. He's just right through the whole thing, and it takes a little bit of time, but I can't be afraid to learn new things, and you never should be. And I get excited about learning new things and how once you learn them, these tools are so helpful in our industry. So they're constant, ever changing, and it is really important to stay on top of those and learn those as much as you can.
Awesome. Awesome. So on the theme of podcasts,
Yes.
top 3 podcasts. Do you have
I don't.
Oh, okay.
It's been about a year, so
Not a problem.
No.
Awesome. So finally, targeted advice. What would you offer either someone starting out in the industry, just, starting out in construction, or that person that is maybe that super looking to advance to the senior super, or the APM that wants to be a senior PM? What advice would you give?
I would, first of all, trust in yourself. And if you feel you have that experience, don't be reserved in asking for that next promotion. But don't feel it's expected either of your employer to give it to you. And be open to, well, maybe in a year, or how do I get to this position? What can I do to achieve? This is my goal. Let them know what you want. I've seen so many times where people want to get to this next position, but they feel like it's just like sometimes asking a girl out. You just sit there and wait for it to happen. It's not. Sometimes it doesn't wait to happen. You have to actually ask for it. You have to say, how do I get there? So go to that person who's ever in charge of that, of hiring or promotions, or if it's the owner, or if it's the director of operations, or if it's the project superintendent, project manager, whoever you're dealing with. Let them know that, hey, I have goals in life. This is what I would like to achieve, and I would really like to learn as much of this industry while I'm in it, So I think it's really important to really put yourself out there and seek that next step.
Yeah, that is so valuable, Bendt, because oftentimes I think people just sit back and wait for promotion to happen, wait for somebody to come to them and tell them that next step. Just going back to everything we've talked about, I think the theme of this podcast has been go out and get it. Go out and ask for it.
Yeah, but there's a certain way too. You don't be pushy about it. You don't want to like, hey, I'm the best. I can't stand when people come to me and say, hey, I'm so qualified. I'm the best at this. I'm the best at that. I like it when somebody comes to me, hey, I've really been working hard on my craft, and I feel I've learned so much. My experience is growing constantly, daily, and I would like to take the next step. And how do I achieve that next step? Just work at it as a team with the group of people you're working with.
Yeah, the how-to. Map out, how can I get there?
Exactly.
Not the assumption that I'm already there. That's a whole
right. Yes. And a lot of it in my 40 years sometimes it just comes down to timing. Sometimes it's not a good time for either yourself or for the person you're trying to get this promotion from. And then sometimes that timing will come up on you. It's like, I didn't even see this coming, and it just
Yeah.
happened. So sometimes, you just have to be prepared when it is ready. Be prepared.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One last question that just popped into my head. And you being at the same company for the past, 21 years, I don't know if you have any advice on this, but when is it time to move on from a company? Is there any advice you could give to somebody that is feeling stuck?
Yes. I think that's a very good question, by the way. And I think, and I've always told my employees, people who work for me, if you feel you want to do something different or you feel you're not being able to achieve your goals here, I want you to move forward. If you can progress with a different company, I've had two people who have done that, and they're in the same position that I am now, and I'm so happy for them.
Wow.
That is fantastic that they're doing this. They have families too, and you always wish that for your employees. And so I think if you feel that there's a logjam up above you and you're not going to move forward, and that's what your ambition is, then that's the time to maybe put your resume out there. And if you are fortunate like I have, that you have a company where the ownership is willing to listen to you, they'll work with you on that, instead of that's the optimal situation if you can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Ben. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with the new and up and comers in our industry.
They're
Uh,
important. They are important. This industry has got a lot more years in San Diego to go. So I have a couple of youths working for me right now, and they're doing fantastic. And we want to promote that.
awesome. Any last pieces of sage advice you want to share?
Um, be thankful. Go outside. Be thankful for the job you have. Be thankful for the family you have, and the hard work. And we're very lucky to have it. So,
I love it. Thank you so much.
all right. Thank you.